I'm Sarah and this is my channel, So Sarah Sewed. Today I'm excited to share with you all my makes from October. Now, I was in lockdown for most of October, so I did get quite a few things made, and I was especially looking towards returning to work, which I have done now. So I was trying to make clothes that would be suitable for returning to work and practical for the life that I am now living again. So the very first thing I'd like to share with you is what I'm wearing today, and this is the Galaxy Tee, which is a free pattern by Pattern Scissors Cloth. It's a beautiful pattern actually, and I actually made two of these. This was the second one I made. This one I have made in a cotton jersey from Nerida Hansen Fabrics, and the designer is Field Day Studio. It's got this beautiful floral print on a brown background. Now, I actually was able, the pattern actually asks for 1.1 meters of fabric, but I bought a remnant. So this was a 90 centimeter remnant from Nerida Hansen, but the width I think is about 150 centimeters. I did have to take some of the length off the t-shirt to get it to fit, but I was pretty happy I was able to squeeze it out of the remnant, and I will be looking for those 90 centimeter remnants in future because I would love a couple more of these t-shirts in my wardrobe. So I'll stand up and show you a little closer. So I've actually got it tucked into some linen cotton Nini culottes today. So even though I've taken off some of the length of the t-shirt, it's still quite long. And it's plenty long for me because because it's got quite a high neckline, I much prefer to have it tucked in anyway. So I really didn't need that extra length. So definitely workable with a small remnant if you're happy to do a little bit of pattern Tetris. So things I love about this pattern, it's beautifully designed, really easy to put together. There are notches everywhere, so rather than having to measure out the neckband, figure out where the centers were and all that kind of thing, all the notches were done for me, and I just had to line them up and then stretch between the notches to get it to line up. Really lovely sleeves, these little puff sleeves, and then the gathered cuff. I really love the detail of that too. So this fabric, the Nerida Hansen cotton jersey, is really soft. It's quite thick. It does, you can see the white if you pull it a little bit, but this t-shirt's not particularly tight, so it's not an issue. So this pattern is available in several sizes, ranging from size 80 to size 122. So those sizes are based off a bust measurement. So size 80 being 80 centimeter bust measurement, and size 122 being 122 centimeter bust measurement. I made the size 96. 96 centimeters equates roughly to about almost 38 inches, which is pretty much spot on for my bust measurements. So it fits really well, and I'm really happy with this one. I mentioned that this one is the second Galaxy Tee that I made. My first one I made in a cotton jersey, or cotton elastane jersey from Darn Cheap Fabrics. And it's on a blue base, and it's got these lovely small daisies printed on it. So this one I made exactly according to the pattern instructions, and you can see in the pictures that I'll insert that the length is quite long. And again, I can't imagine myself ever wearing this out. I find that I sort of lose proportion a little bit if I have a high neck and something long as well. So when I'm wearing a high neck top, I much prefer to wear it with high-waisted pants and sort of bring my proportions a little bit more balanced that way. I don't own an overlocker, so both of these tops were made exclusively just on my sewing machine using zigzag stitches. So whenever I'm doing sewing up seams in knit fabrics, I use a lightning stitch, which is a really narrow, small zigzag stitch. And then I do my top stitching just with a small, not too small zigzag stitch. So I'll show you an example. So you can see just around the neckline, there are little zigzag stitches. It'll be easier to show you the lightning stitch on this top because the blue thread blends into the blue fabric on that one. So I'm going to try and show you the lightning stitch where I've sewn up the side seams on this one. So hopefully you can see how really small that is, and it's a very strong and stretchy stitch. So if you are new to sewing knits or anxious about sewing knits and you don't have an overlocker, I absolutely recommend you give it a go. Look up your machine's manual and see if you've got a lightning stitch. Otherwise try and set it to just a small zigzag for all those seams and you'll be right. I made one more knit top this month and I'm really happy with the way this one turned out too. I was looking through my pattern stash for a dress pattern that might be suitable for one of my November makes and came across the Floreat Dress pattern by Megan Nielsen Patterns. I made this dress, the sleeveless version, last year, about a year ago, and haven't looked at it since. And I got the pattern out and realised I'd sewn up a size 10 in a linen cotton last year. It feels a little bit tight, and looking at the body measurements, I can see why. I cut a size 10, but I really am closer to a size 14 in my measurements for that pattern. But one of the things I noticed about this pattern is that it also has knit fabric options. So I thought, well, I've had this bamboo in my stash for a while that I haven't known what to make with. It's this lovely navy and white bamboo jersey. And I thought this could be a really good way to use, seeing that I'd already cut out the pattern. So it was an A0 PDF that I'd had printed, but I'd cut out the size 10 lines and I knew I wasn't going to be able to use that again. But I thought using a knit fabric, given that I'd prefer negative ease rather than the positive ease that I need for a woven fabric, the size 10 would be very comfortable. So that's what I did. I chopped off the dress at the long top line and then cut out the neckline at the knit top line and the neckband and sewed up the top. I'm really, really happy with the way this turned out. It's got this lovely asymmetrical front piece that goes down, which I think looks really nice untucked, but for a different look, it's very simple to tie a knot and have it more of a cropped look and a more of a fitted look. So I'll insert some pictures of what I mean. This one again was very simple to sew up. Again, I used that lightning stitch and the zigzag stitch combination for everything. This pattern had the notches again for the neckline, so very, very easy to line everything up. All in all, a very enjoyable sew, and I'll definitely be making another one of these because it's very comfortable and I just think a fun shape and something a little bit different. So this pattern is available from sizes 0 to 30. There are two different size ranges you can choose from. So the first one is size 0 to 20, and then it also comes in the curve range, which is 14 to 30. So the size 0 is a bust of 32 inches, a waist of 24 and hips 34 inches. And the size 30 is bust 56, waist 48 and hips 58 inches. So as I mentioned, I made a size 10. My measurements fit more into a size 14, but when working with knit fabrics, it's not as important to have that positive ease around the bust, and instead I was happy to make it slightly smaller than my bust measurements. So very happy with the way it fits. Another top that I made this month was a woven top, and it is the Cielo top by Closet Core Patterns. Now this was one of the very first tops I ever made. Last year when I was learning to sew as a beginner, I had made a couple of things with a little bit of difficulty just trying to learn from instructions or looking at sort of online written sew-alongs, but still was having a little bit of difficulty understanding all of those instructions. So I decided to buy the Learn to Sew Clothing online course from Closet Core Patterns. So with that course, you get 3 patterns, which is the Cielo top, the Pietra pants and the Fiore skirt. And you're also sent a code that lets you access a whole lot of video instructions for all 3 of those patterns. And this was absolutely the best decision I made as a beginner because everything was explained so clearly. There were fantastic videos just guiding you through every single step and also just encouraging you. You know, you see Heather from Closet Core making mistakes and having to, you know, use the seam ripper and, you know, or making, you know, things were not absolutely perfect but they still look fantastic. And it was really reassuring to think, oh, okay, I don't have to be absolutely on that little line for this to work out. So once I'd done that course, really, I had gained so much more confidence and just understood how to read patterns a whole lot better. So I made a couple of the Cielo tops last year, and I have now made a third. So this is just using a cotton dobby from Darn Cheap Fabrics. It's a very, very lightweight, and it's quite sheer. So with this one, I'll always have to wear some kind of singlet underneath. It's hard to tell actually, but yeah, it's pretty much completely see-through. I love this pattern. I made view A, so just the cropped length top with the short sleeves. It's got these lovely cuffs and hemline here. You have an option of lining, doing the neckline with a facing or with bias binding. I always use bias facing rather than a facing if I can, especially on a top like this where you would have been able to see facing through it. So the bias was definitely the way to go with that one. The back has this detail, these little yoke sections at the corners, which I think just makes a simple top a little bit more interesting. So that one I'm sure will get a lot of wear over the coming months. So this pattern is available from sizes 0 to 32, with the size 0 bust measurement being 32 inches and the size 32 being 60 inches. I actually made a size 10. This was a pattern that I cut out last year, over a year ago, and the measurements were bust 36.5, waist 29.5, and hips 38.5. My measurements are definitely more in the size 12 range at this point, so a bust of 38 inches, waist 31 and hips 40 are the given measurements for the size 12 of this pattern. But I did have the ones I'd made last year, which were still, they're comfortable, so I went with size 10 just so I wouldn't have to cut out the pattern again. But actually, if I am going to make it again, I think it would be a good idea to make the size 12 just to have that little bit extra room, especially around the bust and under the arms and things like that. So one more top for this month, and this pattern is definitely becoming a tried and true pattern for me. I made 2 of them in September and I've now made a third in October, and that is the Anthea Blouse by Anna Allen Clothing. I actually bought this fabric on the day it was released back in March. I absolutely love it. It's by a designer called Gabriella Larios, I think, and it was purchased through Nerida Hansen on a lightweight linen cotton base. So the colors are beautiful, but the print I just fell in love with. So I had the fabric sitting in my stash for a while, waiting to decide what to make with it. And I had sort of in my mind, I thought I'd probably make a sagebrush top. But after making a couple of the Anthea blouses and loving them so much, I knew I had enough fabric that would be able to make another one of those, and so that's what I did. So this pattern is available from sizes 00 to 22, with the 00 being a 31-inch bust and the 22 being a 48-inch bust. This pattern does actually have in the finished measurements quite a bit of ease around the bust. So even though my measurements would put me into the size 12, I made a size 10. And making a size 10, I would still have 6 inches of ease around the bust and 15 around the waist. So that was plenty for me. And yeah, I find it comfortable, and it's got enough ease that it still has that relaxed silhouette, but not too oversized. There are 2 sleeve length options for this blouse, and in this case I have made the short length. Now I've actually discovered that there really isn't a huge amount of difference between those 2 lengths. The short one for me comes just above the elbow, whereas the longer length just below. I thought with such a busy print, short sleeves would probably be plenty. The buttons I got, they are matte buttons, matte acrylic buttons, and they're made by Each to Own. And Each to Own buttons, I believe they are exclusively sold through Kylie and the Machine here in Australia. So that's what I got. They used to be sold by the packet, by 8 in a packet. And actually I think I bought one of the packets that have been discontinued. So slight discount on those. but generally all the buttons, the each to own buttons, are now sold, you just buy them individually. One thing I really love about the Anthea blouse is this curved hemline. So it's got this really lovely curve on the side and slightly lower at the back. So my next make was probably my most involved make that I've ever attempted. It is the Hughes Dress by Friday Pattern Company. Now my sister gifted me this fabric for Christmas last year. She gave me 3 meters of this beautiful linen cotton. The designer is Ellen McKenna, and it was from Nerida Hansen Fabrics. So my sister knows me very well, and she chose this amazing fabric, but it's been sitting in my stash just waiting for the right project. And in fact, I had decided it would be a Hughes dress several months ago, but just didn't have the confidence to give it a go until now. The reasons being the number of buttons. I think there are 11 buttons in this one, and just the fitted nature of the dress. So most of the things that I've made in the past have been fairly loose and a little bit of, doesn't really matter so much if the fitting is not quite right. But this one, it is a lot more fitted. So I was a bit nervous about that. Plus the bodice is lined, and I'd never done lining before either. So I kept just sort of putting it off. But now that the weather is becoming a little bit more, spring dress appropriate, I thought it would be the right time to make it and then hopefully wear it in the coming weeks. So the Hughes dress is available from sizes extra small to 7X, with the extra small being a bust measurement of 32 to 33 inches and the 7X being 56 to 60 inches. Now for every single size, there are pattern pieces that you can choose for the top, that you can choose either an A to B cup or a C to D cup. Now my body measurements put me in a B cup generally. I'm about 2 inches difference between my high bust and my full bust. And I decided to make the size large. So my full bust is around 38 inches. The full bust measurements for this pattern were given as 38 to 39 inches. So I thought that will work. And then this pattern does have ties at the back so you can cinch in the waist a little bit. So I thought if it's too big around the waist, that will be fine. But I really wanted it to fit around the bust. That was my most important decision. So I made the size large. In the finished measurements, it said it was going to be in the size large, it said the finished measurement of the bust would be 42 inches. And I thought, well, that will be plenty. However, it's quite tight. So I wonder whether I should have actually made the C to D cup version rather than the A to B. So when I had it on, and you can see in these pictures, it is pulling a little bit across the bust. So it might be a case of trying to wear it with a different bra that doesn't give me so much fullness in that area perhaps. I'm hoping that I can wear it comfortably and it won't bother me too much, because it was a really, it took me a long time to make. It was quite an involved pattern for me. And I actually love it, apart from that feeling of it being slightly tight across the bust. So I really enjoyed this make. I enjoyed learning new skills. I enjoyed taking my time and doing some of the steps by hand, including attaching the lining around the armholes by hand and also parts of the waistband. The lining at the waist by hand. That was mainly just because I missed a whole lot of sections when I tried to stitch in the ditch, but I am the sort of person to follow the instructions pretty much exactly as written. I won't sort of go off on my own tangent unless I have a really good reason to. So for that reason, I followed the instructions of the way all of the seams were to be finished, and this is where I have a little bit of a problem with this pattern. So there are a lot of pieces in this dress. So the front skirt is made of 4 panels and the back is made of 3 panels. So there's a lot of seams to join all of those together. But for every single one of those seams, you were told to sew the seam and then finish the seams separately, both sides of the seam separately, and then to press open. So first of all, I think when you're going to be pressing a seam open, it's much easier to finish the seams before you sew. Trying to open them and finish the seams for me is quite difficult. I'm using a zigzag stitch to do that. I'm not sure if it's different if you're overlocking, but for me it would be much easier to finish the seams and then sew them. But the other thing was, I couldn't actually see a reason for the seams to be pressed open. If they hadn't said that, I definitely would have done French seams on all of them, because I'm just worried. I mean, I've used a zigzag stitch, but I am worried about the edges coming apart. And you can sort of see, I haven't washed this since making it, but you can see, you know, there's already a little bit of fraying there that I hope does not become worse. But if I had known there was really no practical purpose for those seams being pressed open, I definitely would have done them as French seams. And I do plan to make the dress again, and next time I would French seam all of those seams. The top section isn't an issue because of the lining, so there are no exposed seams really in the top. So you can see here, apart from just through the sleeve, but all of that lining is attached by hand there. Oh, and the other tricky thing, the trickiest thing probably about making this dress is that you have to turn 2 tubes at the start. So the very first thing you do is you create the tabs for the back here, this tie-up section, and you create the tie that goes through them. So they're pretty thin, and turning tubes I think is my nemesis in sewing. I find it so difficult, but I got there in the end. But so I think once you get past that, it's pretty smooth sailing, even though there are a lot of steps and a lot of seams to sew, and yeah, quite time consuming. The buttons again I got from Kylie and the Machine. They are each to own buttons, and these ones are in a pale pink, and again they're the acrylic. Oops, this one's getting a bit bright in here. And I'm happy with the way they turned out. Being 160 centimeters tall, I knew I was going to have to take some of the length off the dress. If I hadn't, it was basically floor length. And I took probably about 4.5 inches off. I do regret taking that much off. I wish it was just maybe an inch or so longer, but it is at a length that I'm comfortable wearing it. I wanted a length that I would feel comfortable wearing in flats or in heels, so I could dress it up or down. And I think it's just slightly too short, but I'll go with it. But for next time, not so short. So that is the Hughes Dress by Friday Pattern Company. Being a teacher, I have spent many of the last weeks teaching online through a screen and not really needing to worry about what I'm wearing except for my top half. So I've been wearing nice tops and generally yoga pants and slippers every day. But with my return to school, I needed to create some more options for my bottom half as well. So I made a pair of the Winslow Culottes by Helen's Closet. I've made these before. They're so comfortable. I get compliments every time I wear them. And what I really love about them is how practical they are. Being a teacher, I'm a music teacher and mainly a singing and choir teacher, and we spend a lot of time outside, especially with some restrictions at the moment. We are encouraged to sing outside and have our rehearsals outside. And we also, towards the end of the year, have a number of outside performances. So I need clothes that I do not want to worry about blowing up in the wind or having any kind of wardrobe malfunctions like that. So the culottes, they are lovely and drapey, very airy. They look like a skirt, but are practical like pants. This fabric is called Women on Country, and it's by an Aboriginal artist called Holly Sanders, and it's printed on a cotton sateen from Nerida Hanson Fabrics. I bought 2 meters because I knew that would be the perfect amount to make the cropped culottes by Helen's Closet I've made before, and I just think it's stunning. It is the most beautiful pattern and colors. I'm sorry about the sunlight. So this pattern, if you were to make it as written, it would have these big pleats on both sides at the front and then again at the back with a invisible zip inserted at the back. I prefer an elasticized waistband, at least for part of it. So I do the elastic waistband hack, which Helen has on her website. So mine at the back are gathered in with elastic, so they don't have the pleats at the back. And they're so comfortable. The first time when I actually made them slightly too loose, and I like a nice firm fit in my elasticized waistband pants. So I just cut open where I put the elastic in, chopped off an inch of the elastic and then re-sewed it up. And I'm so much more happy with them now. They're really, really comfy. My measurements put me in a size 14 for this pattern, but because I used the elasticized waistband, I really probably could have made a size 12, and that might have given me a little bit less bulk at the back. I really love them, and I am looking forward to wearing them more. Because of the colors in them, I think I need a couple more tops that will match. So I've actually bought some dark brown linen to make a top, which I'll hopefully make soon, just to give me a few more options of what to match with this. The Winslow Culottes have a number of different lengths you can make, and the sizes available are from 0 to 34, with the 34 being a 62-inch hip. I love Helen's Closet patterns. I've made several of her patterns, and every single time the instructions are so well described, everything's clear. They've always just been a pleasure to make. Now, this pattern's elasticized waistband hack is not part of the pattern. It's described in a blog on Helen's Closet's website. And I actually think it's not that clear, I have to say. It looks like from that description on the blog that you would end up with an exposed seam on the waistband, which you have to finish. I much prefer to fold over the waistband and cover up the seam. And there's a really great YouTube sew along tutorial, which is from your Sarah K. I'll link it below in case you're interested. But I find that's a little bit clearer to follow than trying to read the blog instructions in this case. So I would recommend that if you are after trying this pattern. This one is listed as an advanced beginner pattern. I think the invisible zip makes it that advanced level, but if you are more interested in doing an elasticized back, then I think it's just for a beginner. And if you're a beginner and interested, you would be absolutely fine with this pattern. It is getting really sunny in here, so I have just brought the camera a little bit closer. So I'd love to show you my last make for the month, which is a hat. Now, once a week, I am required to be on yard duty outside, and I really do need to wear a hat. It is very, very sunny at this time of year. The hats that I have been wearing have just been too tight around my head, so a little bit uncomfortable, and not a great look when you remove a very, very tight hat and then have to return to teaching. So I thought I would make a hat for myself. Now, I used material that was scraps from my from previous projects, and I used a pattern by LB Textiles called the Serpentine Hat, a really lovely wide brimmed hat pattern. The fabrics that I used were, the first one is this beautiful linen cotton from Nerida Hansen in a May Gibbs print, which I just love. And the hat is reversible. So on the inside, I have used a linen cotton from Spotlight, and I made a Zadie jumpsuit in this one last year. So I had received some comments when I talked about the plan to make this hat. And so thank you very much for the people who had suggested that this brim can be quite floppy and get in your eyes a little bit. So I decided to put wire all around the edge of the hat so that I'd be able to stop that from drooping down. So I actually had in my little collection of, bits and pieces, this wire. I bought it from Bunnings, and it says it's wire perfect for jewelry making or beading, floral arrangements, crocheting and crafts. I actually bought it when I was making some headbands. I just wanted to make some wired headbands last year. So I had heaps of it left over. So black hobby wire. Actually, I used the white one for this one, but I have black as well. So it actually worked really well. I'm really happy with the way the hat keeps its shape. I'll show you what it looks like on. So a really, really nice wide brim, and you can see, you can move the wire and change it to suit the shape that you like. Because the wire is in there, it doesn't have that, beautiful smooth line all around. But for me, the practical won over the appearance. So I don't think it's really anything anyone would notice, but it is a little bit bumpier and a little bit, not that beautiful straight line that you would get if you had been able to sew a line right at the edge. So I'll try and show you. Excuse my hat hair. Around the edge here, preferably that line would be really close to the edge, but I sewed it to make a casing for the wire. So all through here is where the wire is sitting. So I just followed the instructions exactly, but when it came to putting this this line of stitching in, I pressed wire all the way around at the same time. And then so that's, yeah, that line of stitching is a little bit further from the edge. I made a size large. I measured my hat, I measured my head, and believed my measurement fit the size large perfectly, which made sense to me. I was always the person at school, who needed to get their hat ordered in, especially for their great big head. So I thought, well, that makes sense. No wonder my head never fits in normal hats. So I made the size large, but actually it ended up being a little bit too big. So it's comfortable enough, in the house, it's comfortable enough. It's also reversible, which is a bit fun, but a little bit of wind and it just blows straight off my head. So I will try and make another one of these. I've got plenty of linen cotton scraps, and next time I would make the size down just to make it a little bit snugger around my head. I actually also bought some heavy interfacing so that next time I could try without the wire and just use a nice heavy interfaced brim instead. And so hopefully that will be a success. So that is all of my makes for October. I am doubtful that I'll ever have such a productive month again. I have far less time at home now. My boys have gone back to school. I've gone back to work. Our activities are starting up again. We're out of the house a lot more. And I am finding that I'm really enjoying being able to actually wear my me-mades out and about. Thank you very much for watching, and especially if you've hung around right to the end, I really appreciate your support. I will include links for all of the patterns I've used and any of the fabrics that are still available down in the description box. If you have liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. I have recently surpassed 500 subscribers, which has been a real thrill for me and so encouraging to know that so many people are enjoying my videos and what I've been making. I always enjoy hearing from you too, so do leave a comment if that is something you'd like to do, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye bye.